All right. I'd like to call the February 26, 2018 City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Christy Malcho.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Tom Hornish.
Present.
Councilmember Karen Moran.
Present.
Councilmember Jason Ritchie.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Present.
Councilmember Ramiro Valderrama.
Present.
Great. Councilmember Moran, would you be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, I have a comment for a possible change for consideration. I would like to propose for consideration alternate or moving 13 to 12 and 12 to 13 so that we have, after the consent, we would go straight to new business and then finish up unfinished business to address what I think everybody's here for so that we don't have to go through the pro plan first.
Do I have a second? I second. Okay. We have an amendment to move agenda item 13 to be dealt with prior to item 12. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? By a vote of 7-0, we will be moving agenda item 13 in front of 12. So all those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye.
I have another amendment.
Oh,
For a minute.
okay.
I'd like to pull 5 for discussion.
Do I have a second?
Second. I don't think you need the second for consent, though.
Okay, so let's see, stormwater feature. Mr. City Manager, where would you like us to move that item? After the pro plan?
Why don't we do that after the pro plan?
Okay, very good. Okay, so all those in favor of the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
By a vote of, all those opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, we will be moving consent agenda item number 5 after the pro plan. Okay, next we have public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council. 3-minute limit per person or 5 minutes of representing the official position of a recognized community organization. If you would like to show a video or PowerPoint, it must have been submitted or emailed by 5 p.m. at the end of business day to the city clerk, Melanie Anderson, at manderson@sammamish.us. Please be aware, council meetings are videotaped and available to the public. Before we get started, we obviously have a lot of people here. Some of you which have maybe not been here before to address the council, there is a timer up there. It is green up until the point where you have 30 seconds. The light will turn yellow, and then when you are out of time, it will turn red. So again, 3 minutes if you are just making comment, 5 minutes if you are a recognized community organization. First on the list is Paula Harper Christensen. Lita, give me just a second before you start that timer. And Paula, I apologize. If you are here and you're going to be speaking on a topic and someone else has said essentially what you're going to say in advance of you getting up there, you can simply concede your 3 minutes and say, I agree with the previous speaker. Or if you're here with a group, you can also stand at the podium together if you would like. Paula, the floor is yours.
My name is Paula Harper Christensen, 23416 Southeast 17th Place, Sammamish. Been at the same address for 31 years. I'm here to stand for our collective children in hopes of the esteemed City Council, and thank you for serving, that adopting a resolution that will call us, all of us, to action to prevent future gun violence. I'm here as a mother, a grandmother, a teacher, a child development specialist, and one who's made a lifelong commitment to keeping children safe. Sammamish ranked safest city in Washington State, 5th safest in the country. Wow, yay us. Yet each time gunfire breaks out on or near a school, it shatters the sense of safety that each child has. Speaking of children and guns in the same sentence is highly emotional. So when I hear people speak of children or guns, I think, why is that even a question? The truth is, children trust adults to keep them safe. The truth is, children know that lies are bad. The truth is that children want to be a part of this conversation that we are having right now. The truth is that children feel things as deeply as adults. The truth is children expect honesty. The truth is children bring people together. The truth is children have big dreams. The truth is that children expect the adults to protect them. The resolution asks our city to advocate for state and federal agencies to enact legislation to require comprehensive background checks for all gun purchases and support legislation to further gun violence, to further prevent gun violence. Well, the legislation is a good place to start. Most products have more regulations than guns. In fact, cars, gas, cell phones, and even wine and cheese have more regulations than guns. Stand for the children. Thank you.
So as we go through the public comment, I will ask that we do not have applause during, I understand if you are supportive, but we typically, for any subject matter, ask that the audience remain quiet. So we appreciate that. Next, I have Brenda Severns.
Hi, my name is Brenda Severns. I live at 4625 247th Place, Southeast Sammamish, one of the new incorporated Sammamish people. So bear with me, I'm nervous. I've never spoke about this before or in a community setting like this. 90% of Americans want better gun reform. I think we can all be in agreement about that. I stand in support of the resolution to call for action to prevent future gun violence. I made a list today of how it affected my family, and I started counting on my toes, so it wasn't good. Okay. Just some facts. The resolution includes revised Code of Washington 9.41.113, Section 4A is an exception to the rule. This would involve transfer of guns to family members, which is an exception. That means an uncle can give a nephew a gun. He doesn't have to go get a background check. My brother-in-law died because his uncle decided to give him a gun. He committed suicide with an AR-15 in 2010. My husband's brother, he was despondent. A relative who didn't know him very well, thought he was a gun collector, gave him a gun. It changes families immensely. Suicide is an epidemic in our country. More people die of suicide by gun than are murdered, 2/3 actually from the totals. In 2007, more preschoolers in this country, 85, were killed by guns than on-duty police officers. Of the 116,255 people shot by guns, 35,000 died from murder and 21, or died from suicide. I got the numbers wrong, sorry. I'll move on. 90% of attempted suicides are from non-gun methods survive and rarely go again. They show regret, they get help. 9 out of 10 of people who commit suicide by gun are dead. They never get another chance. 3% of people who choose to commit suicide by other methods, I'm not going to get into what they are, they usually live, or are successful. I'm saying only 3% die, 97% live. Access to guns in the home triples the risk of suicide. American kids are 11 times more likely to die of a gun violence compared to those in high-income countries. Rural and urban is the same. In closing, sorry, by my last closing. This is a baby step, this resolution. Let's lead for our community's well-being and the lives and futures of our young people. And go resolution, thanks.
Thank you. Next, I have Steve Christensen.
Good evening. My name is Steve Christensen. I live at 23416 Southeast 17th Place in Sammamish. And I've come tonight to speak in support of the adoption of this resolution calling for action to prevent future gun violence. The resolution refers numerous times to mass shootings, a tragedy that happens all too often, been inflicted on communities in our country. In almost all cases, the weapon of choice has been an AR-15, the civilian version of the military M16. I have some familiarity with this weapon because of my time in the Army. The high-velocity rounds, over 3,200 feet per second, inflict horrific damage on a human body. The testimony from trauma center doctors and nurses is sobering. The latest episode in Parkland, Florida should give us all pause here in Sammamish. The city of Parkland is very similar in a lot of respects to our community. I say this because the idea that these events happen somewhere else is false. There are between 5 and 10 million AR-15s in this country. If the relationship is linear, that means within the city of Sammamish, there are about 1,000 to 2,000 of these weapons. For these reasons, I believe a resolution addressing the methods and means to control gun violence is absolutely vital. I'd like to point out in closing that most of the mass shootings in this country occur in businesses, schools, and churches. On 228th out here from East Lake High School to Pine Lake Middle School, there are 8 schools and 4 churches. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Tim Kimsey.
I'll happily cede my time, as I'm sure some other folks will speak more eloquently in favor of the resolution than myself.
Thank you. Next, I have Beata Baker.
Hi, I'm Beata Baker, 169 221st Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. I've been here for 30 years. And I'm not a mom, but I'm here to speak as a human for the resolution to prevent gun violence. It shouldn't be easy to kill people. It should be hard to kill people. No one needs to be good at killing people, except perhaps for professional executioners, and there aren't that many of those. The mandate of our police is preserve and protect the public. The mandate of the armed forces is to protect our country. Killing is often involved, but it's not the mandate. It should be hard to kill people. That's why there's testing and laws for things like food and medicine, other drugs, vehicles, consumer products, so that these things don't kill people. Our country's current gun laws seem determined to make it really easy to kill people. And it's worked. Every day, tragically, we see how really easy it is to kill people with guns. It's insane how easy it's become to kill people with guns. And it's even more insane that our government officials don't seem to have the stones to want to stop it. Sammamish is a young city. And as a young city, we have a golden opportunity to tell a story that shows us as always coming down on the right side of history and the right side of humanity and the right side of common sense. So passing this resolution to prevent gun violence would be a good way to ensure that. I know it's symbolic, but symbols are powerful. The cross is a symbol. The flag is a symbol. So let's raise a loud, strong, powerful symbol here in Sammamish, because it really shouldn't be easy to kill people.
Thank you. Next, I have Dale Funke.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Dale Funke. I live in Woodinville, 16210 165th Place Northeast. I'm here to speak partially in favor of and partially in opposition to the resolution as it is written. My understanding is that the resolution originally had words in it that spoke to illegal guns or illegal firearms. I believe those terms should be put back into the resolution. The resolution as it is now presented speaks about dangerous hands, and it has a lot of other vague and unspecific things in it. Who can define dangerous hands? I can't. Can you? And I don't mean a definition of I know it when I see it, but I mean a definition that is legally defensible. It's not there, and I think that that phrase should be deleted. I do think I have some specific suggestions for amendments or additions or edits into the resolution that are things that can be done. You could be asking the school districts to have active shooter drills. Most of us in this room lived through an era when we had bomb drills. We got under our desks. Today, schools have earthquake drills. What's wrong with having active shooter drills? We've never had nuclear bombs dropped on our schools, but we had drills for that. We've had lots of school shootings, but we don't have drills for that. That makes no sense to me. Additionally, the resolution could call for all of the laws that are on the books to be enforced, and there are a lot of them. The truth is, we probably don't need a lot of new laws, but we really could stand to see the laws that we have on the books aggressively enforced. Points where there are illegal transfers of firearms, places or points where somebody owns a firearm and doesn't store it correctly and leaves it accessible. Those kinds of things are doable now without new laws. We just have to get busy and work with what we have. I was in my doctor's office today, and in the brand new issue, Sports Illustrated, of all places, there's an article written by or about a coach, a high school football coach in outside of Cleveland 6 years ago, Coach Hall. He's monitoring the study hall, and a kid comes in, 17-year-old kid with a 22 Ruger semi-automatic, and he starts shooting the place up. Coach Hall's the 350-pound guy. He charges the kid and screams at him to stop. The kid takes off running. Well, he's a 17-year-old kid. He's pretty fast on his foot. He outruns the coach. But when the police caught up with him, they asked him, well, why did he run? He says, because Coach Hall was chasing me. Coach Hall goes on to form a foundation with the principal and another school official, and their goal. Now, this is a guy who's faced down a shooter. He's got standing to speak. And their goals are improve safety in schools by focusing on mental health resources, security staffing, and training. He says nothing about gun control. He's looking at the cultural problem. And I think that's where your resolution needs to be pointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have John Galvin.
John Galvin, 432 228th Avenue, Southeast, Sammamish. I'd rather be addressing the issue that you're here about than the town center moratorium. I'd rather see a moratorium on selling and buying guns. But I'll be quick about this. End the town center moratorium, completely unnecessary, causing much harm and no good. The moratorium is a thinly disguised attack on the town center, which is supposed to be the heart of the city. Personal agendas are at play, not a pause in development. The city has 2 years of current and approved building permits in the pipeline, so there's no pause. Harming city and the developer relationship. This developer is giving the city everything we want, everything we've planned for over the last 15 years. Transportation management is much more than just concurrency. It's a whole host of issues. But what you've done is narrow it down to just one simple issue. Concurrency is only one of a whole host of tools that you have to manage transportation. But you focused on just one small item and expect to come up with something valuable. Concurrency does not build roads, doesn't give us multimodal transportation, no complete streets, no local services, no jobs, no public transportation, no additional revenues, but the town center does. And that's the very thing that you are attacking. The issues that were brought up by Mickey Mueller have all been addressed quite effectively, but you seem to ignore it. What's going on? You are all ears listening to Mickey Mueller, a single citizen with questionable critique and a narrow focus on single issue. But you ignore the staff, you ignore experts, the business community, landowners, you ignore the comp plan, the town center plan, the regional plan, you ignore the millions of dollars of investment. And this is kind of the attitude you're showing toward town center developers, the business community, landowners. Not very nice. End this unnecessary moratorium and focus on the transportation management plan. Stop wasting time and money. Don't risk more serious consequences. And if I have a few seconds, I've lived where just having a bullet will get you a long sentence in jail. And you can walk the streets, you don't worry about chasing down somebody who stole somebody's purse, thinking that that person might have a gun, and I've done that. Now, rushing in to try to stop some violence, you never know. They're going to pull out a gun and blast you away. So we got to get rid of those darn things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Sharon Stein.
Sharon Steinbus, 24933 Southeast 14th Street, Sammamish. I'm a member of the Sammamish Community Wildlife Habitat Group and Stormwater Stewards. First, I want to support the PRO plan and urge the city to adopt it, including Section 4.8, establish a plant salvage program, and Section 4.13, promote environmental learning through interpretive signage programs. A plant salvage program means that volunteers go to sites where developers have given us permission to literally go in and rescue or salvage plants that would otherwise go to the bulldozer. This is such a satisfying activity to participate in to save a piece of Sammamish. In the past, these rescued plants have been used in various restoration efforts in the city, including Ebright Creek and the Lancaster Ridge Stormwater Pond. A robust salvage program involves locating a site, such as Big Rock Park, with access to water where rescued plants could be grown. This plan has many benefits. It helps to mitigate the cost of purchasing plants for restoration work for many of the volunteer restoration activities in Sammamish. Furthermore, this means that plants from Sammamish stay in Sammamish parks, streams, and stormwater pond restorations. And finally, the plant rescue program can provide city residents with the satisfaction that they are saving a bit of Sammamish. Second, I want to thank the city of Sammamish for their investment in the city's volunteer programs, including the training of Washington native plant stewards. These volunteers go on to work in partnership with the city and the city's volunteer coordinator, L.B. Jones, to lead and organize many hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of volunteer work by Sammamish community members. These volunteer work parties in Sammamish help to preserve, maintain, and restore our parks, and also serve to build a sense of community and ownership, care and concern, and stewardship by Sammamish residents for their city. I hope the city will take advantage of the opportunity to train more Washington State Native Plant Society volunteers and wildlife habitat steward for volunteer leadership roles for restoration and preservation work in the city. These trainings do have a cost, but what the city gains in community stewardship and enrichment is priceless. I want to point out again that a portion of these costs can be mitigated by establishing a robust plant salvage or plant rescue program in the city, because the rescued plants can then be used in city restoration projects, saving money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Deb Sookie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and I applaud the people that came tonight to make their comments known. This is a very important place to do it. Thank you for all your work. My name is Deb Sookie. I'm the Executive Director of the Sammamish Chamber, and moving the podium here. I would like to talk about 1980s, when our family first came here, and we settled in Timberline, right on the edge of Sahalee. There were no services here. There was no grocery store. There was traffic, too, traffic problems. We could not turn left out of Timberline to go down the hill during commute time. Our kids were bused off the plateau to go to school. There weren't enough schools. Excuse me. So over the years, we watched and we were delighted when the first grocery store of Safeway came and when other services came. But over the years, even before I worked for the chamber, I heard people say, more restaurants, more services, please. We have to leave the plateau. And we're getting awfully tired of going on and off the plateau. So then in 2008, when I became the executive director, we did surveys. And people said, we want more services for our families. We want to take them to karate and dance on the plateau. We don't want to have to leave during rush hour traffic to go on and off. And so over the years, the centers were developed that we have today. And then about 2008, they released, the city council and the staff worked hard with the citizens to bring a plan together, the town center, a plan that would bring services we all needed so we wouldn't have to leave the plateau. It would alleviate the trips on and off the plateau. And then last year we opened the first part of the town center. Hooray, the vision started. So we have Met Market, we have the new pavilion that's medical, we have all kinds of services. We want to continue that going. We have a big developer with a big plan. The plan is actually, I've heard some of it, it's actually serving the popular votes here of what people want. We do want them to proceed. We don't want to lose this big developer and have smaller construction developers come in. So I'm here to plead with you to please release the town center as soon as you can from the moratorium. I know your ending is coming soon for this moratorium. So I beg you, please, let this vision proceed. Let us have our town center. Let us serve our citizens in a great way, providing services they need. This is what it's all about. This is what it was planned for. The core area of the town center was planned not to be congested. It has impact fees that will help pay for some of the road improvements. And it has a lot of other things that are needed. So please, if you want to see what the new developer is proposing for the town center, come to our luncheon on March 15th. It'll be a complete open house presentation about what one of the big developers is planning for the future of town center. Everyone's invited. Just register, sammamishchamber.org. And thank you all for coming about gun violence. Terrible thing in our nation. As a child, I never had to work with that, and hopefully there is an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Piper Strand.
So my name's Piper Strand, 22238 Northeast 7th Street. I've lived in Sammamish for 40 years, almost my entire life. I am here asking, 2 years ago, I sent out an email to a few of you asking if you were NRA members. Not many of you responded, but Tom Hornish, you did respond, and I appreciate that. And your answer was, yes, I am a member, although I'm not sure that that in itself gives you a full view of my view on guns. Maybe even more importantly, as a council member, I don't believe we'd have any direct impact on gun control. It's more of a state and national issue. So here we are 2 years later, and it's a local issue. And I don't have too much to say about it that hasn't already been said, except just encouraging our city to follow along with our neighboring cities and join the resolution to reduce gun violence and keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jamie Minold.
I'll concede my time. I agree with the other speakers.
Thank you, Jamie. Fair enough. So next, I have Nancy LeSueur.
Some.
Good evening. My name is Nancy LeSueur. I live at 21720 Southeast 8th Street in Sammamish, and I have been a resident of Sammamish, or what was previously Sammamish, for almost 20 years. I'm here to provide commentary on the proposed development on the corner of Southeast 8th and 204th Street, which is PSUB 2016-26, which is also known as the Carrier Plan. In March of 2016, we collectively, myself and some of our neighbors, gave a comment at a city council meeting where we voiced our concerns about this proposed development. During that meeting, Mr. Valderrama asked the city manager to keep the city council up to date on activities with regards to the proposed development. In January of 2017, after the SEPA was issued for the property, I followed up with Mr. Valderrama in email to ask him if he had ever received an update on the property, and he had not. After the SEPA was issued, I was very concerned about how the developer, which is Toll Brothers, was looking at the ratings of the wetlands and the streams on the property and how they wanted to run the sewer lines through the wetlands and the streams where where there was clearly other options available to them. We spent over 100 hours reviewing documentation and found multiple mistakes in their wetland and stream ratings. As a citizen, our only option was to file an appeal to bring these mistakes to light since the SEPA had been issued. One of our big findings was that the stream typing had been changed in the days leading up to the SEPA being issued. By changing the stream typing to a lesser rating, this allowed them to cross the stream with the sewer. This change in stream typing was not caught by the city's biologists in their peer review of the critical area study, and was only after we filed this in our appeal that the biologists acknowledged the critical last-minute change. As part of the appeal process, we needed to get a lawyer and an expert biologist to clearly point out what should have been caught by the city planners and the biologists. On our major appeal points, the hearing examiner agreed with our conclusion that the applicant, which is Toll Brothers, did not provide supporting evidence for the ratings of the streams and the wetlands in question. As city residents, between us and our neighbors, we spent over $60,000, which in hindsight could have been avoided. Our learnings through this process is that we need to continue to be diligent in our review of all documentation that has been submitted. The developer, Toll Brothers, refiled their application for their SEPA in January and 2 PAUEs. We've already found multiple errors and issues in what they are claiming in their applications. We will be filing a detailed commentary to the city planner during the open comment period. We are encouraged by the fact that the city planner has listened to the points we are raising about what we are seeing in the application and the additional views not being presented by the developer. I hope is that we can partner with the city during this process instead of finding ourselves on opposite sides of the table that requires unnecessary legal expenses on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, we've now hit 30 minutes. I assume we want to extend public comment. So we have 30 minutes allotted for public comment. The council has the discretion of increasing that to an additional 30 minutes. So is the council willing to?
No.
Okay, very good. And Councilmember Valderrama.
You have a commentary and a question. I understand that the LeSueurs have met with staff in person today, that they're, as they mentioned, they're appreciative. But I would again request that the council be kept up to date as to how this proceeds and moves forward.
Very good. Next, I have Will Stockman.
Hi, I'll keep it brief. I'm also talking about the carrier development. I live on 21315 Southeast 8th Street, which is southwest of where the development in question is. The question I asked for the council is, you know, some of the things that we've seen. If I, as a property owner, I have wetlands, you know, if I were to try to drill a 15-foot hole or line through the wetlands, I'd be in jail. But the developer has found, leveraging a loophole through the Sammamish Water District, a way to get around the Sammamish Municipal Code, which limits crossings. So here we are, a developer is leveraging, you know, a lot of money, a lot of assets that a private citizen would never be able to accomplish or be able to drive something like this. So, and I'm a tax-paying citizen. So they're actually leveraging our system to the developer's benefit rather than the city's benefit. And then secondly, after this is complete, if the development goes through, what are the ramifications? You know, I have wetlands. What are the ramifications if that water level changes? You know, if those calculations are not correct. You know, I would ask that something be put in place to where there is a capability to have ramifications if that development impacts the wetlands, if it goes through, if it impacts the wetlands adversely. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next, I have Jason Weedman.
I have a question for the city manager, if he can have the water district meet with staff just to address that issue, to follow up and see if there is indeed a loophole and how we might close that. Thank you.
My name is Jason Williams.
Oh, sorry. Looks like Weedman on here.
I didn't sign myself up, but my address, I live at 625 218th Avenue Southeast. I'm also here to discuss the impacts of the carrier project. I was part of the group of people that spent a lot of legal fees trying to make sure that the loopholes that are in the SMC code were not utilized to forge a 20-foot deep sewer trench through a wetland and a stream barrier. The applicant has resubmitted. The plan's exactly the same. They have not changed anything that we fought them on the first time last year. But they have found a way to get a public agency utility exemption, which is a way for the public agency, which is the Sammamish Sewer and Water, to not be subjected to the actual critical areas code of the Sammamish City Code. Basically, if the PAUE is granted, they can plow the sewer right through the wetland or the stream or whatever it is without needing to be held to any kind of regard for the critical area. So we've done some research. We've looked at what PAUEs are. You know, we've educated ourselves now on what that is. It's a way for a public agency to utilize this exemption to be able to put in infrastructure that supports other surrounding properties. It benefits the community. This developer has applied for 2 PAUEs on this particular plat, not just one, but 2. One to relocate a stream and one to put the sewer through the wetland. So there are parts of the code where you're supposed to combine the impacts of the critical areas, where you align utilities, you put them in existing right-of-ways, you put them in places that are already going to be impacted. Road infrastructure has to be updated. You know, why not put that infrastructure within the road area that they're going to be updating already? So The PAUE looks to be decided upon by the deputy planner. So it's in their hands to make that decision from what we can understand of the code. The code states that they may approve it or may not approve it. So we're asking that the city council and the city manager intervene on the behalf of the residents to assure that the realistic and appropriate approval or disapproval of the applicant's PAUEs is fully understood before that is issued. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next, I have Tony Sloane.
My name is Tony Sloane. I live at 21725 Southeast 8th Street. I too am here to speak on the Carrier subdivision as a homeowner and how the developers' plans impact me personally. I live on the south side of Southeast 8th Street, which means I'm zoned R1. If they put the sewer through the development, that means I will never have sewer. That means my home and my property will always be zoned R1. When I would go to sell it, it could not be subdivided, it could not be developed. I do have property that could be developed if I had a sewer on Southeast 8th Street. So when they say that they are developing for the good of the community, they're certainly not thinking about those of us on the south side of Southeast 8th Street, because we're going to totally miss out and never be able to develop our property because we are going to always be on septic. So I'm here to say, I don't think that Toll Brothers is thinking about the community, which is what they say they are doing, but rather they're thinking about themselves in the easiest way and the cheapest way to get a sewer in so that they can put a subdivision in. So I think there's some wording there that we need to look at and be very aware of as to what's really benefiting the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Karen, and I apologize, I cannot read the last name. It looks like an A for the last name. Karen? Anyone named Karen? Karen, is it Karen Herring? Sorry, Karen.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Karen Herring, 23684 Southeast 32nd Way. First of all, I want to ditto what Sharon said. The pro plan is excellent. It should be adopted. It was a job well done. I have a couple things. Especially for 4.8, the establishment plant salvage program within the city, we need to do that. We can do that because you have volunteers, stewards. We'll all go work there for you. So it won't cost really anything but the property. And promote environmental learning through the interpretive signage programs. These should all be done, and hey, they can even occur on that salvage property. Sammamish likely has properties that could meet this need, and the stewards and volunteers can manage it for you. And just the trails, the fields, the dog parks, and the picnic and play areas are necessary, so are the natural area preservations, which should all be kept in that plan and considered highly. They're so important. And then I wanted to talk again about stormwater. Hey. According to the Sammamish website fact, these things are said in there, and I think we could actually do them. I'm going to do the quote thing. Quote, fortunately, something can be done to keep stormwater flooding and pollution problems from becoming worse. We can manage stormwater to control flooding, plan and construct stormwater systems so contaminants are removed before they pollute our surface waters, our groundwater resources, acquire and protect natural waterways while they still exist or can be rehabilitated. We can look for opportunities to build soft structures, such as ponds, swales, or wetlands, to work with existing or hard structures, such as pipes and concrete channels. We can enhance and enforce existing ordinances to make sure property owners consider the effects of stormwater before, during, and after development of their land. We can educate ourselves about how our actions affect the quality of our water and about what we can do to improve the water quality, and we can plan carefully to create solutions before problems became too great, end quote. And I'm going to add number 7, design and implement retrofits and improvements where problems exist before they become larger, wider, and more expensive to fix and address. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I have Adam Curtin back.
My name's Adam Kurtenbeck. I'm at 4261 244th Place Southeast. I moved here 15 years ago and have lived here ever since and worked and coached the entire time I've been here, youth sports. I want to start by addressing a question that was asked earlier. What's wrong with live shooter drills? Everything. There's everything wrong with live shooter drills. The fact that they actually even occur is the greatest indictment on us as parents that's ever existed. We as parents have to have kids who have to worry about being shot at school. How did we get to this place, and why are we just now doing something about it? It's ridiculous. When you've got little kids worried about wearing bright colors to school because it makes them a target for a shooter, then we as adults have so grossly and completely lost our way that it is ridiculous. And this isn't an accident, just so you know. In the 1970s, the NRA was the voice of common sense gun control. And basically there was a splinter group that broke off and they were kicked out. And they came back and took over the NRA, which is what happened. And they were led by 2 people who believed that the Kennedy assassination was an attempt to take guns away from Americans. And if that sounds familiar, you'll notice the paranoia that went into that has been used in every terrible happening that has happened ever since. Every single one is an attempt to take away guns. It's ridiculous, it's pathetic, and it's the paranoia and fear of 40 years that has been jammed down our throats. And here we are at this point, and we don't know where to go. This is the point, this is the subject matter, this is the case that is going to decide who you were as a person for our generation. Just as slavery, segregation decided our forefathers who they were, this is ours. Embrace it, take it. We need leadership now. Please lead.
Again, I kindly ask that the audience refrain from clapping. Thank you. Next, I have Kim Suver.
Oh, hey. My name is Kim Suver. I live at 20445 Northeast 31st Street in Sammamish. Whew. I am the mom of 4 children. I've read this a million times. You'd think I would be able to do it. I have been a Sammamish resident from its inception. In fact, my 2 oldest boys, who were pretty little at the time, were on the cover of the Sammamish Review in August of 1999. They were climbing the fence at Bill Reams Park during the first mayor's speech. I love living in Sammamish, but I do think we live in a bit of a bubble up here, a bubble that I hope will never be burst by a tragic mass shooting that seems to be becoming so commonplace across our country. I don't want to live in fear that sending my child off to school or letting her go off to the movies with her friends might be the last time I see her. These are not fears we should have as parents, and certainly fears that our children should not have. It's our job to protect them, but the system is failing our children. I am not anti-gun. I am anti-violence. I'm here today to ask my city council to approve the resolution, but as well, please sign the Mayors Against Illegal Guns pledge. It is a bipartisan group of more than 1,000 current and former mayors from nearly every state who have pledged to fight for the common sense gun laws. Together, the mayors have been leaders in promoting and advocating for common sense laws that reduce gun violence and save lives. Every Town for Gun Safety's Mayor's Pledge simply supports legislation to close gun sales loopholes and promotes a city's access to gun ownership databases. This commitment is not about taking away legally obtained guns. You can be a gun owner and still believe in gun control. The mayors of all of our surrounding cities have signed this pledge. Issaquah, Redmond, Kirkland. Mayor Malchow, you came to my door when you were campaigning. You told us how important it was to save trees in our community and how important the traffic issue was. I loved your passion for these issues. City council members, don't you think the safety of our future generation and all the residents of Sammamish is just as important and deserves your passion as trees and traffic? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, I just want to remind everyone, I know this is a very passionate issue for many of us, but it can intimidate other people who want to speak at the podium and take a different position. So again, I request that we not have applause, just as a respectful measure to everyone in the room. Thank you. Next, I have John Mueller.
Hi, I'm John Miller. I live at 905 259th Court, Northeast. I've been here for 20 years. And I'm not an NRA member. I'm not a gun owner. But I did teach. And I was the guy that people looked at when all hell broke loose. I held down one half of a very large high school at one time in my life. I have been there. I have been there. My concern is this. I hear a lot of people talking about guns and the NRA. It's not that simple. And I really ask you, go and look at the February 23rd issue of the Miami Herald newspaper. Take a look at the details that went on in Florida. And these are people there. These are senior people in law enforcement, senior people in legal enforcement that are speaking out on the issues. Had the people followed that law, that guy would not have had a gun. Because I am into results, not emotion, I'm very sensitive to the Promise program. I'm very sensitive to the least punitive measures programs. If our school systems have those things in effect, you better really look into those programs and make sure that they're dealing with those things properly, because they are the cornerstone of what went wrong in Florida. I'm into results. I'm also interested in, when it comes to illegal firearms and straw purchases. If you take a look at what's going on in Chicago, and I used to live there, if Chicago would just go and enforce the existing laws regarding illegal guns and straw purchases, they would see a dramatic decrease in what the problems that they have there. So what I'm saying is this thing is not a real simple issue. It's very complex. There's an awful lot of pieces to the puzzle. Take a look at what they're talking about in Florida. They did a beautiful job in this article in the Miami Herald on February 23rd. Take a look at it. You'll see that there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and I hope we're going to be looking at results and not just trying to do something or trying to be symbolic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Mary Wicker.
A perk of having kids in Sammamish. Even got the coffee bean. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Mary Wicker. I live at 408 208th Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. I want to start off by thanking the Stormwater team for the updates they recently did on the website to the Stormwater page. There's a lot of good information there. What I passed out is actually from the Washington Department of Ecology that's also done with Central Washington University Extension, and it's related to things I've been bringing up in front of you. In the past, I've showed you the map from Bellevue that's red for infiltration potential infeasibility for low-impact development. I also brought the map from Mercer Island, which is also a red, yellow, green for infiltration and infeasibility, and I had also previously provided you code and regulations from those cities about where you can't put water into the ground because it will cause problems over different things. So there's something called a rain garden. It's also bioretention. It's green infrastructure. It is a good thing to do. And in this 96-page brochure that I've just given you 4 pages from, it says you should put a rain garden in places. But if you've got slopes greater than 10%, you need to have a geotechnical engineer involved. And then it says where not to put a rain garden. And these should sound familiar too. They're things I brought up before. You shouldn't do it within 10 feet of a building or over utilities or near the edge of steep slopes or bluffs or near septic tanks or drain fields or reserve drain fields, particularly in areas where there aren't sewer connections for people, in low spots that don't drain well, and in areas that would require disturbing healthy native soils, trees, and other vegetation, where there is high groundwater during the winter and near wells, because it's really important to protect our water resources. It does talk about dial 811 before you dig, and then if you don't like the wording, they have a really nice picture drawing of all the things I just read. And then on the back side, they talk about testing soils. They talk about the difference between clay and sand. And there's also a thing that says be sure to check for high groundwater, because if you're putting water in the ground above steep slopes, the water can come out. It can cause safety problems. It can cause instability down below. It can cause safety problems for people, for property, and for infrastructure. So between what I've showed you from Bellevue, from Mercer Island, from ecology, and what's been shown over and over, I hope that the city, you have the data to do this. You need to move forward with it when you look at moving forward with stormwater, particularly for the code water amendments, which are coming up again, I believe, on 3/20. They're scheduled again. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Laurie Sotelo.
Thank you. My name is Laurie Sotelo. Although I raised my son here at Eastside Catholic, I'm a new resident here. I live at 2214 209th Place Northeast in Sammamish. Government resolutions should express a formal opinion or action by our government. In my opinion, this resolution that we have concerning gun violence does not do that. The whereas statements of fact are incomplete and not necessarily fitting to the title of the resolution. 31,000 gun deaths is more like 33,000 gun deaths. 2/3 of those are suicide by gun. That's an important, relevant fact that should be in the resolution. Criminal background checks on private firearm sales is the law of the land by initiative in 2004, Initiative 594. It already prevents gun violence in that particular reference. Do we need to do more? That needs to be in the resolution if that's the purpose. Keep guns out of dangerous hands while respecting the rights of responsible gun owners. What does that mean? The hands aren't dangerous, the humans are dangerous, and what they're doing is dangerous. The resolved statements, they support and advocate for other entities to do things, but the resolution doesn't express what we're going to do as a city. It does actually say what you guys want other people to do, but it doesn't say what you're going to do. So if we want to make a statement about gun violence, it should be loud and clear what the city thinks and is prepared to do to combat it. I would ask you to reconsider the resolution that you have before you. Take it back to the drawing board, make it more clear, make it more concise, and tell the people what we're going to do as a community to fight gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Queenie Nugent.
Good evening, esteemed City Council members. My name is Queenie Nguyen, and I am a sophomore at Skyline High School, as well as an executive officer at Skyline's Club Med. Club Med is a medical club we have at Skyline High School that is affiliated with two student leadership organizations, the International Health Occupation Students of America, or HOSA, and the Washington Career and Technical Sports Medicine Association, WCTSMA. Through these organizations, students such as I and me are exposed to healthcare professionals, educated about healthcare issues, provided leadership training, and given the opportunity to put their healthcare skills and knowledge to the test at state and international conferences and competitions. As 2017 Washington State's and eventually the international champion in dental science, I can attest to the fact that my involvement in the HOSA organization has inspired me to cultivate citizenship, collaborate, and promote the prominence of future healthcare professionals. HOSA encourages its chapters to partake in community outreach and education by hosting HOSA Week at local schools. As part of Skyline High School's proposed HOSA Week, my fellow club members and I would, alongside our ASB body, give back to our local healthcare professionals, present medical procedures and training, and raise awareness and appreciation to our mission in general. Our club beseeches the City Council to officiate HOSA Week at Skyline High School to galvanize community support for the next generation of healthcare professionals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Yen Flanagan.
My name is Ian Flanagan, 2508 200th Avenue Southeast, Sammamish. I am here to urge the City Council to adopt the resolution for gun violence, and I will say no more because I agree with the people who talked before me. All I'm asking you, this may not be a perfect resolution, but this is the first step in the right direction. Like the other gentleman said, that it's a very complex problem, and I agree, but this is the first step toward the right direction. And it's not perfect, but we need to start doing something because this is one shooting incident is one too many, and we as a city, we cannot afford it. So please, I urge City Council to adopt the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, we're at our hour mark for public comment. I have approximately 20 minutes worth of public comment. Do we want to indulge our residents that have sat here already and allow them to speak? Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Jan Bird.
Hello, I'm Jan Bird. I live at 3310 221st Avenue Southeast in Sammamish, and I'm asking that the council approve the Parks Pro Plan. I did see a few little items that need to be corrected. You mentioned on page 74 of the document about 5 parks that were certified as a wildlife habitat, and actually you have 10 parks that have been certified as a wildlife habitat. So Big Rock, Bill Reams East Sammamish Park, Evans Creek Preserve, Illahee, and Sammamish Landing are all certified, as well as the ones you had listed in the plan. One we don't have certified is Klahani, since it's newly acquired and has a bog. That might be one that would be worthwhile certifying. And some of the other things that I liked about the Parks Pro plan was mentioned earlier about promoting volunteer park improvement. And as Sharon Stein just mentioned, I hope that we'll do a program in 2019 with the Washington Native Plant Society. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's an 80-hour program that teaches restoration skills to volunteers. In return, the volunteers are given an acre of a city park and charged with developing a restoration plan and carrying it out through leading volunteer work parties. Volunteers are required to commit 100 hours to the project, which is kind of laughable because usually most people do 200 to 300 hours in those projects. And anyway, so the city actually is contracted with the Native Plant Society 3 times in the past. There's a restoration site in the Lower Commons, and actually it's a native plant garden, and it wasn't even mentioned as one of the amenities. The community garden was mentioned, but that wasn't. Also, Illahee Trail was another project a number of years ago, and of course, Ebright Creek is the one that we started several years ago and still working on. In the future, I'd also like to see us join the Green Cities program with Forterra, because they can provide more long-term volunteer restoration support for our parks, which in turn will help with the urban forestry plan and the needs we have with that. Also, I won't go into more detail with the plant salvage program. As Sharon mentioned earlier, I think that's great if we could provide a place for that. And also to provide environmental learning through interpretive signage. We have so little signage in the parks. I think there's a lot of opportunities where to do education that way. So overall, I think it's a very good comprehensive plan. I hope and urge that you vote for it. And also agree with the folks that believe that we should pass the ordinance for preventing future gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Shavi Sakaria.
Shavi Sakaria, my address is 1575 236th Court Northeast. I am a junior at Eastlake High School, and I can assure you there's not a shortage of students who suffer from mental health issues at Eastlake. There's not a shortage of students who have access to guns either. Yesterday, I spent 5 hours personally cutting out 200 flyers to give to Eastlake students in hopes that they will join me in protesting the hold the gun lobby seems to have in America at the expense of students. I'm only a kid. I have no special interests, no special money-motivated interests. I only have my life to defend, my right to go to school without feeling afraid. I only have my little brother's life, a right to go to school without feeling afraid to defend. He likes robotics and video games. I don't want to worry about the possibility of him going to school one morning and never coming home. What's to say our town couldn't be the next Sandy Hook? Nothing. I am afraid. You can see me shaking. I'm terrified. Each of the communities that have suffered a mass shooting has been surprised at why here, why this community. We are just as vulnerable as any other place. The town in Douglas had a higher safety rating than Sammamish, but that did not save them. Please take these preventative actions to keep us safe. Children don't have representation in government other than by way of love and family. Don't let us down. Finally, I also wanted to mention that my generation will be voting in the next elections, and we want change. We as kids are watching to see what the government, including this city council, is doing to keep us safe. And we don't hesitate to allow the things we see to inform our ballots next year and the year after that and as we grow into adults. We are watching you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Shari Newton.
Hi, my name is Sherry Newton. My address is 22929 Northeast 54th Street in Redmond. I'm only like 10 minutes from here. I'm right on the border. I don't know if you guys have seen the article, The Missing Link. It's by Brian Williams. It was on February 17th, 2018, so it's a very recent article, and I would suggest that you would like to read this so that you get an overview of everything. The one thing he talks about is mental illness. He said that is the missing link in this whole thing. He's saying that he put in the bullet points 37 schools, he listed them, and he listed the kids that unfortunately did the shootings, and that all of them, and he showed the mental illness and what drugs they were on. Between all these kids, and there was more than 37 of them, because some of them did team up, there was all these kids that are on some form of antidepressant or hallucinogent, and there was at least 9 different types of drugs that were on this list that these kids were taking. So my concern is where the focus is. These are young, most of them, all of them, were young men, and they all had a violent tendency. There's a breakdown in the family value system. Even here tonight, how many times have you asked people not to clap? And how many times did they disregard or disrespect you by doing it anyway? This is disrespecting, and you need to have respect for the family values and for our officials. This isn't about guns. These are the family values. We have broken families, and these kids are falling through the system, and we need to work with these kids and help them. Dr. Carson, Ben Carson, had a very violent temper as he was growing up. He even tried to stab a kid because of his violent tendencies. And thank God that knife had went ahead and hit the buckle of the other kid, and the knife broke. And that changed everything for him. I don't want to get to that point. I want us to fix the problem. So what is the purpose of the revolution? I don't get it, because in the Washington state legislation, I'm also shaking, the state presumption says here, such local ordinance should have the same penalties as provided by the state law. Local laws and ordinances that are inconsistent with, more restricted than, or exceed the requirements of state law should not be enacted and are presumed and repealed, regardless of the nature of the code, charter, or home rule statute of such state, town, county, and municipalities. Sorry, guys. The last thing I want to say, because I know I'm in yellow, is how many articles that are also out there have guns have helped people. You don't hear about a lot of that. Here's one, Chicago Tribune. Sheriff, man who's witnessed stabbing used threat on AR-15 style rifles to stop Oswego's attack. I have more, but my time is up. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Next, I have Liza Vasey. Is Liza still here? Okay, next I have Justin Skaggs.
Hi, my name is Justin Skaggs. I live at 2439 235th Avenue Northeast, and I've been a resident here for 17 years. I moved to Sammamish because it was a safe city. I wanted to be here for my kids because of the great schools. I'm just here to urge you to pass the resolution. It seems like it's a simple vote because it's in favor of protecting our kids and, you know, being against illegal guns. And so I'm wondering who on the council is in favor of illegal guns. It seems like it would be a simple matter. So I would just like to lend my voice to urge you to pass the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our final person on our sign-up sheet, unless there is anyone else who would like to address the council. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment.
I would like to address the council.
Oh, please come forward.
My name is Suzanne Byron. I live at 1740 221st Place Northeast in Sammamish. My family has lived here since 2000. I'm not originally from Washington State. I grew up in Florida. My parents live in Parkland. My youngest sister was in the inaugural graduating class from Douglas High School. My 2 nephews attended Douglas. Is the resolution perfect? No. Are we perfect? No. But when do we start to say, let's try to be? Let's take a stand. Let's say, maybe it's time to do something different. I would really like to see my local representatives be brave, because I'm not seeing any bravery at any other level of government, and I'm very tired of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to address the council?
Yes, if I could. Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Appleby. I'm your neighbor from Bellevue. Thank you, council members and council president. I sat and I came here this evening to observe and really get a sense of how the community feels. And my feelings are in line with what's going on. I'm a 20-year resident of Washington, originally from Connecticut, and I grew up a few towns away from Sandy Hook, so I can feel the energy, maybe not the best word, in the air. And we all know someone. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to just lend my support to your resolution and add that if you're going to take a stand, put some meat on the bone. It's a nice start, and nothing will ever be perfect, but in listening, there's so many good points made here this evening. And when we talk about protecting the kids, we don't want to scare them at the same time that we're protecting them. I grew up in the 60s and 70s when we had fire drills and nuclear drills and different things. What's wrong with having a safety drill? And what is wrong with putting meat into this resolution that demands children be afforded the same protections that everyone else has? If you're going to make a resolution, demand that the legislature provide funds for additional safety in these schools. Take the opportunity to make this a model for neighboring communities. As I mentioned, I'm from Bellevue. And this could be something we can add to our city council in our city. A few other notes. There's so many good points that each speaker made. I agree probably with 99% of what was said here this evening. But when you look and you put it all together, passing new laws and rules are extremely difficult. But the point was made on several occasions that what we need to do is enforce what's existing on the books. There's been a breakdown in the system. There's no accountability. What happened in Florida is unspeakable. An additional law wouldn't have helped when the current laws didn't help. So I would just add that strengthen background checks, enforce current laws, work cohesively as a community, as a group, as a government to figure what we can do that most people agree on. Most folks won't agree on everything, but if we can get 80% from both sides, it's not one side versus the other side. We're on the same side. How can we make this? So again, I lend my support to your resolution, but make it matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have concluded public comment. We need to move to the consent calendar, which has already technically been amended by Councilmember Moran. So I need a motion to approve the amended consent calendar.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, we have approved the consent calendar. We will now move to our next order of business, which we have rearranged, and we will now look at the resolution calling for action to prevent future gun violence. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll have a few introductory remarks and trying to set the stage for the resolution. In the aftermath of the Parkland, Florida shooting, several council members requested that the city discuss and take action in support of school safety and efforts at reducing the potential for reoccurrence of school shootings. I have discussed this topic with the superintendents of both the Lake Washington and the Issaquah school districts, Dr. Tracy Pierce and Ron Thiele. Both have asked me to convey their appreciation toward the city of Sammamish for the long-term support and collaborative partnership they feel they have with the city related to school security. Both districts have a very close relationship with city management and public safety departments, including both police and fire. The districts have City of Sammamish police officers assigned as school resource officers, or otherwise known as SROs at our high schools. And there have been active shooter drills performed outside of school hours in the high schools. Additionally, the districts have school security committees that city staff are members of. The districts continuously strive to assess and reassess the level of security and enact best practices in order to protect against potential threats. I've reiterated to them the city's willingness and commitment to assist our schools in protecting our children. Both superintendents have asked me to communicate to the parents that if they do have questions regarding school security or the safety of their children, please reach out to them directly. For discussion, you have before you a resolution of the City Council expressing the city's concern related to gun violence and their support for efforts to protect our children from gun violence, support for mental health services for those in need, encourage federal and state legislation to require comprehensive background checks for firearm sales or transfers, and engage with our neighboring municipalities on this issue. This resolution evolved over several days to clarify the intent of the resolution and better represent the actions the city has authority and responsibility for. The regulation of firearms in Washington state has largely been preempted by the state of Washington. Pursuant to that, I've asked Captain Jesse Anderson from the King County Sheriff's Office to give us a brief overview of the regulations that we have in place. Captain Anderson, would you like to come to the podium?
Thank you very much for this time. Good evening, everyone. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself before I get into this, I've been with the Sheriff's Office going on 27 years now, and a big part of my career has been spent investigating homicides and other crimes involving gun violence. So I feel the pain out there. I've experienced it. I've seen it, so I understand it. Fortunately, thankfully, thank God, I haven't experienced a school shooting event, and I hope that throughout the rest of my career that doesn't happen. But I want to talk about, kind of the specifics of the regulations, but more importantly, I want to get into real quickly as far as after that, what we're doing with the Sheriff's Office and the Sammamish Police to address these issues. And I'm speaking on behalf of both the Sheriff's Office and the Sammamish Police in this capacity. I have worked in the city of Sammamish as a sergeant, and I've also filled the acting chief role with the contract city of Sammamish over the years. So I am familiar with your city, and I have a connection with what's going on here. So we do, as a Sheriff's Office, regulate concealed weapons permits. We also handle firearms dealer's license and also alien firearms licenses. I won't get into all to the nuts and bolts of that, but I can tell you that we do a thorough background on those, and we look at criminal history and everything else that we can get to. Is it perfect? No. If I had a mental illness, can I indicate that I don't have one and get a weapon? Yeah, that can happen, right? As several of you have alluded to, the mental illness problem is a big issue, and that's something that we are addressing more from a public health standpoint. But we do all the steps under the law to oversee the regulation of weapons. And I know that's not just what you want to hear tonight, but I can assure you that that's what's going on. as Mr. Howard pointed out, we have SROs in the schools, but we've taken it a step further too. We also have what we call the Adopt a School program. Our officers will go out, make contact in a more mini type of SRO approach to interacting with the schools, finding out what's going on, being there to listen to issues, any concerns that the administrators have with the students, to be the eyes and ears, to be available to address any problems that go on. We're going to step up efforts in that area to spend more time with the schools. There's only so many officers to go around with a lot of schools, as you know, and so we have to make our way around to spend time with the schools. But that's important, because the reality is I see a little bit of finger pointing going on, and I understand that. It's a very emotional topic. But the reality is we're all in this together. We all have to be working together, because we can't be everywhere. Police can't be everywhere to see what's going on. We need to hear from you when there's issues involving kids that they're doing strange things, their drawings, what they're talking about, their actions, their behavior. We need to hear about that. It may not be criminal, probably many times it's not, but it's something that we want to know about so we can follow up on it. Because I can assure you that anytime we receive a threat against a school, which thankfully there's not a lot of them, we do everything we can to follow up on that. We don't dismiss it as a hoax. We take every step we can within our available resources, appropriate resources, to address that issue. And that's looking over social media, diving into computers, doing digital forensics work, everything that we can to identify who the suspect is, and then take appropriate action under the law to be able to hold them accountable for it. So that stuff is going on. You're not seeing it. It's kind of behind the scenes unless you happen to be working at that school or somehow involved in it. But it's happening, and we're doing everything we can. We don't dismiss this. These incidents, these are serious. You hear on the media that sometimes maybe things are overlooked. Yeah, it probably happens. But I don't think we always get the full picture either. So being involved in investigations helps understand what's going on. So we do get involved in active shooter training. We work with the schools on it. We do everything we can to educate within any requests that come to our attention. And some of the things that we're looking at now, kind of fast forwarding and considering, it's not stopping, it's continuing to happen, is looking at this more from a public health approach. Yeah, we want to work with the legislators to help, change the laws, but I think immediate and probably a little more meaningful approach right now is to look at how are we going to keep the guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have guns, right? People with mental illness, people who have a propensity towards violence. So looking at how can we work with public health to address these issues, to identify the people that shouldn't have them. Currently, there's things that are happening right now. I didn't introduce what I'm doing now. I oversee our contracts throughout King County, but also under my control and under my oversight, I have the civil unit. And we serve papers. We serve eviction notices and seizure notices and things like that. But also we serve extreme risk protection orders and orders to surrender weapons. So we're out there proactively taking guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. And so keep this, there's a lot of things going on. Do we want more detectives to do that? Heck yeah. A lot of times it comes down to resources to be able to do that. But the citizens, the police, we can request these orders be issued by a judge if we think somebody is violent. Before they're even convicted of a crime, before they're arrested, before they're charged, we can go out there and take these guns out of their hands. Sometimes it's easier said than done. It depends on, some cooperation, but we can get search warrants and things like that to go after them. But we're taking these guns off the street. This is a new program under the King County Prosecutor's Office. We have Seattle Police involved in it. We have King County Sheriff's Office. And so we're out there doing these kind of things to get these guns off the streets, out of the hands of the people that shouldn't have them. So just something to keep in mind with that. Today, Dow Constantine, executive for King County, sent out a message letting us know his plans, what he's standing by to support programs to solve these problems, increase children's safety, securing firearms, restricting access to firearms, reporting stolen firearms. Looking at this, again, from the more of the public health crisis approach, as opposed to the actual tool itself, the instrument itself that's actually causing the physical harm. And so we're looking at data-driven strategies to go after this, looking at different approaches to help attack this problem. Lock It Up is one of the programs that they're looking at. I know some of this is not completely new as far as locking firearms. We get it, but that message hasn't been received by all. I just want to conclude that we don't want you living in fear. I mean, that's the last thing we want, and we want you to carry out your day-to-day business without being concerned about fear. But be there, help us, work with us to identify these problems so we can address these issues early on to prevent this violence from happening. I look at this more of a community policing approach. Community policing, that concept has been around for years, for decades. It's the same thing. We can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. They need all of your help, too, to address these issues. So it's a team effort. It's a team effort. So if you see something, say something, hear something, let us know about what's going on. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Anderson. At this point, I'll turn things over to the mayor and council for discussion.
Great. Would entertain a motion to adopt.
I move that we adopt the resolution for the city of Sammamish to prevent future gun violence.
It has been moved and seconded. Discussion? Deputy Mayor Hornish.
Wow, I didn't know I was that fast. I want to just comment that I know this is very emotional, and what I think is really great is the activism that we've seen tonight with the number of people that have commented and have been motivated to say something. It is emotionally charged on both sides, and I'm going to take some quotes from what I heard tonight. It's a complex issue. There is no simple solution. I hear the emotion, I hear the connection, I feel the connection. I have 2 high school students here in Sammamish. I won't go into details of some of the things that have been considered, but I empathize with everybody who has kids, and even those who don't, that are concerned about gun violence. The resolution, the best thing I heard was it's not perfect. I do have some concerns about it. I don't know how you can say you're against kids' safety, which is the first part of the resolution. I don't know how you can say you're against supporting mental health and getting the help for people who need that. The third resolution is about the transfers, and we heard that there are some concerns about that on the other side about just what that means. There is a notation in that resolution that talks about RCW. If you read that RCW, there are many exemptions in there that address when the background check is not needed. Is it perfect? No. But I can support this resolution because it's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you. I don't think this is an emotional response. I think this is a rational response, one of many, I hope, that we can take as a city council and as a city to try to bring safety to our schools and our community, and I support the resolution fully.
Good. Councilmember Valderrama.
Yes, I do believe this is emotionally charged an issue of passion. I think we were all appalled by what happened in Florida. All of us are parents here. We have kids, some better than others, that can bring you in and recognize that need. I'm especially fortunate that I have 4 kids here that have gone through there, and we lived through, and one of my daughter's schoolmates got shot by the sniper in D.C., so we're very familiar with the situations of when it starts to hit closer to home than one may like. I think everybody on this council recognizes that and the need to be able to act, and the council therefore moved quickly. I think we have some issues here and processes that are broken. I heard the biggest group of speakers here thinking that we are assigning mayors against illegal guns. That's not the case here. That's not the resolution that's here. In fact, since that's come out and started to take place, I believe there's 5 resolutions that have come through, and the last one that we are considering just came through last night that I had received. So I think there's a number of issues that have to be addressed here and explain what's gone on in the process and how we can fix it. The original resolution was the Mayors Against Illegal Guns. That then was changed by staff, was looking at it, brought to the Public Safety. The Public Safety Committee decided that they wanted to act on this in a proactive manner. We sat with our police school resource officers, started to look into the issues of how that was drafted, jurisdictional things, and tried to start to look to see how can we address this and make it a meaningful legislation that can start to move forward. Following our discussion that was open to the public, it was then moved to an ad hoc legislative group so that they could look at it. And at that point, with Council Member Ritchie here, we were moving to make sure we had something that all 7 council members could approve. And no time during that discussion of either 2 meetings was dangerous hands involved in those discussions. It then went to another group that then took 3 and drafted a resolution that went to dangerous hands, which was cited as a concern, not because we're not concerned about dangerous hands, but how do we define it? So my problem with this resolution, which then went through yet another iteration, which is the one that's now partially seen on the screen, is the line before now therefore being seen. And I think we need to look at the suggestions made. I would recommend taking out dangerous hands unless somebody can define what dangerous hands is here. Or, as was discussed earlier by the Chief of Police, there is a unit that's created here in the state of Washington to confiscate guns with Ellie Center. And what's interesting about that, Washington is one of 5 states in the country that allows, with a judicial judge intervening, to confiscate guns, as was heard. So we could support that unit and their actions that the law now incorporates in the state as a result of the 2016 initiative, taking that out and leaving that ambiguity that's in there and that could be misperceived and misunderstood. So I would make a recommendation that that be stricken, and either we add that we're going to be supporting the county and the state laws that are already established for looking at the confiscation of guns. I also, on the last item here, were to engage with our neighboring municipalities. I think what we could change that is working with our neighboring municipalities through our regional organizations so that we can be more thoughtful. I think directly going to them may not be perceived well by their neighbors if they're perceiving this to come from that direction versus working cooperatively with them in the regional organizations. So I would recommend that we take and insert that wording into it as well.
So do you have an amendment that you want to restate for the council?
I have 2 motions. The first motion
there's a motion on the floor, so you'd be amending the motion.
That's correct. The amended motion would be to strike the words of "and keeping guns out of dangerous hands," with consideration by this council if they want to put in another clause to support the existing laws that are already established. The other one would be to change on the last one from "to engage with our neighboring municipalities," to change that working with our neighboring municipalities.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded, so we are now voting on.
Well, we should have discussion first on the amendment.
Do you want to speak further to your amendment or no?
Yeah, what I would like to do, and what we could do, is get the name of the actual law. I know that the center that confiscates guns, called the Ellie Center, that confiscates. There's a new unit created of 12 that is operation, so we can either say that or to say that support the legislation that's been put in 2016 and the judicial procedures that have been put in place by the state.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Moran. Do you have your button on? Nope. Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. I know that everyone's very busy, and I know how important this topic is, and I want to say thank you for showing up. I appreciate that there may be some ambiguity with the term dangerous hands. I'm happy to define that. We can define that all night long, but I think that it's really important that we not leave that out. I think that it is a complex issue, but it is not. It is that part of that complexity, we can't overlook the fact that we have guns in the hands of people that shouldn't have them. And that's not a slight against anyone who is a responsible gun owner. But we clearly have too many guns out there with people that shouldn't have them. Thank goodness that Dr. Ben Carson only had a knife and not a gun. And so maybe if we had fewer guns in the wrong hands, then we wouldn't have some of these problems. So I'm happy to take some of the words of our law enforcement and say that we need to keep guns out of the hands of people with a history or a propensity for violence. Does that clarify dangerous for you?
I'd be amiable, but I think that's what the law is. Why don't we state the law that already does that instead of...
If you can show me that law, that's great. If not, I think we can agree on that
If we
language.
could ask the, where's the sheriff, if he's here, if he's got the name of that law that already exists.
Or Mr. City Manager, is it something that you can?
If you could come to the DIAS and just give us the wording of... All of this is there in a sense. So these laws are already there and we're supporting. I'm just trying to make sure that it's clarifiable and actionable.
I'm sorry, I wasn't actually paying attention right what you thought.
We have, you had talked about the confiscation,
Right.
the LE Center
Under
that's
LE
created
Center,
out there
yes.
that supports a law that I believe was created in 2016 in the state of Washington that allows judges to issue those warrants to be able to get the guns out there. And I was looking for the name of that legislation.
The name of it. I know that there's the ordinance that the county created.
That's right,
but
or even the county. We'll take the county ordinance.
It's like a 5-digit number, and I can't tell you offhand what it is.
Name of it or reference?
I could Google it and find out.
Okay.
Is it considered a red flag law?
Yeah.
Is that just a nickname?
A nickname for it, yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Just so that we be to Councilmember Stewart's position.
I think that my wording actually goes farther. That's to take guns away from people who already have them who shouldn't. I think we want to prevent them from getting in their hands in the first place as well. So I think when we say things like keep guns out of the hands of people with a history or a propensity for violence, it covers both. Don't let them get them in the first place, and if they have them, let's take them away. So.
Sorry? Yes. Yeah, so could we then, I'd accept that word if we put the citation to what the laws are that legally allow it.
Can we just say per state law?
Yeah, the state or the county law.
Can we just say per state law?
Okay, per
without
state
having-
law.
Okay,
That would be
so
good.
are
I would,
you
that's
willing to
acceptable to me,
accept
per
that
state law.
friendly-
I'm not sure what we're saying now, sorry.
Instead of, he's wanting to quote the RCW, but because we don't have the RCW, I'm just saying add what you just said.
Okay.
Yes,
As a friendly amendment, and add on the end of it per state law.
per state law.
So
That's correct.
Lita, did you capture that?
That's acceptable.
Keep guns out of the hands of people with a history or propensity for violence.
As per state law.
So the other portion I just want to reiterate is in changing to engage with our neighboring municipalities to work.
Working with our neighboring
Okay, so
municipalities.
I think we still have a couple of lights up on the amendment. Are you?
No, go ahead. We can
Okay,
finish with
yeah,
that
we need
amendment.
to finish off the amendment. Oh, Councilmember Ross.
I'll
Nope.
pass.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more lights, so we need to vote on the amendment to the motion, so.
The modified amendment.
No,
Well-
just the amendment
We
first.
now have
Well,
the
it's-
combined words of Stewart and myself.
Yes, but you accepted the friendly amendment? Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
I'm sorry,
Aye.
are we just voting on the amendment or
The
the whole
amendment,
resolution?
and
Okay.
then we'll vote on the
Okay.
full resolution. So just on the amendment. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By a vote of 7-0, the amendment has passed. Now we need to vote on the full resolution as amended. Councilmember Stewart.
Sorry, I'd like to propose another amendment. Since we did hear from people, several actually, that said they felt it should go further, I would like to see if the council would be amenable to adding that we would like to support more funding for more detectives for this program that we just heard from our law enforcement, and that we support more funding for community policing as well, which were the two requests that we just got from our local law enforcement.
Did you want to speak to your amendment?
No, that's it. I think it speaks for itself. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Ross. Nope. Okay, Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, I'm opposed to that. We have a police study that's now underway that's going to be coming back to us with a complete looking into the future. This is contemplated as one of the issues in our public safety meeting. We've discussed that. I think that's a more prudent time. It's going to be here in a couple of months. They've already got the consultant. So I think that's a more rational way of looking at it and being able to see what our needs are. And we'll also be having the input from this discussion. So I would be opposed to that amendment for those reasons.
Okay, Councilmember Ritchie.
Can I have the amendment restated in the format that we would be voting on it, please?
Lita, did you capture it? Or Councilmember Stewart, could you repeat it, please?
Sure. So where we would like to advocate for the availability and funding of mental health issues, we would add funding for more detectives, for the program to take guns away from the people we think could be violent, and more funding for community policing.
May I offer a friendly amendment?
Yes.
To advocate for the availability and funding of mental health and substance abuse treatment programs, as well as increased law enforcement. Or increase, you can put it after mental health, mental health for children.
No.
And increased law enforcement. Simple 3 words, increased law enforcement.
I accept
I
the
like your
friendly
thinking.
amendment.
Lita, are you capturing
Not
that?
specifying here where.
Yeah, that's it.
What do you think?
No, I don't have my light
All
on.
the lights went off. Okay.
Well, hang on, I got to think about that
Okay,
one.
hold on. Some-
Okay, so can you read that back, please? What I have is increased funding for mental health issues and an increase in law enforcement.
Sorry, can I
Yeah.
clarify?
Please.
I'm just going to read number 3 here, or number 2, excuse me. To advocate for the availability and funding of mental health and substance abuse treatment programs, comma, including comprehensive mental health services for children, comma, as well as, and additional law enforcement resources
As needed.
So that
all in need of help have sufficient access to these
And it doesn't
services.
follow.
As I understand it, if I may, from listening to the law enforcement officer that we just heard from, that is something that they could sorely use to help them process I-594 issues, to be able to have the resources they need. That's a concrete step that we can take right now, and I support that amendment.
Thank you.
I can't support.
Councilmember Moran.
I can't support the word "all" in that amendment, only because the word "all" meaning is that all citizens, everybody in Puget Sound, all Sammamish residents. I mean, who all do you want to fund? We've got a really limited budget, so this goes back again to the Public Safety Committee where, when we spoke with Chief, she was very clear that she really wanted to have that study come back and then be able to say what the needs were. And so I already feel like we're pressing it, but now to add the word "all" in there, I think that's pushing it.
Deputy Mayor Hornish.
I cannot support that amendment because I don't have enough information to know what the other requirements that we need to spend our money on. We talk about it all the time. We have one issue and we go, oh, let's spend some more money on it. But we don't ever look at it in the whole picture. And to do it here, I think it's out of context and we can't do it.
Councilmember Ritchie, you still have your light on? Okay,
I'd like to respond.
go ahead.
Advocating for the availability and funding. That does not mean Sammamish has a blank check out just to go put out a fire. That means we are going to advocate at a local, state, federal, county, pray, do whatever you need to do, grow trees with money on them. We need to figure out a way to get resources, people, and money from our city, from our county, from our state, from our federal government. We are advocating that resources in all shapes and forms are needed for all people in need, children, adults, in King County, in Sammamish. We are making a statement that this is something we see as a need, and we want to be part of a solution. It is not writing a blank check from our limited budget.
Councilmember, oh wait, sorry, Deputy, or our City Manager.
I just have a, I guess maybe a wording suggestion. If the term, so that all in need is an issue, you may want to consider saying so that those in need of help have sufficient access.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
I'm
Oh,
just
those, not all?
wordsmithing, so rather than so that all in need is changed to so that those in need may take
Would you accept that?
consideration.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more lights, so we are now going to vote on this amendment. Lita, is everyone clear on the amendment, or do Lita?
I'd like it read back one more
Okay, can you
time.
read it back one more time?
I don't have it all complete.
Okay, Jason,
with the-
you're it then.
Come on, Jason.
Am I on here? Okay. To advocate for the availability of funding, to advocate for the availability and funding of mental health and substance abuse treatment programs, including comprehensive mental health services for children, as well as law enforcement. Is that what we said?
Increase law enforcement.
And increase law enforcement. Resources, thank you. So that those, not all, strike all, add those, in need of help have sufficient access to these services.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 6-1, the amendment passes. Now we'll be voting on the full resolution. So, any discussion? Good, okay. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By a vote of 7-0, the resolution passes.
Break.
For the pro plan now, right? We will take a quick break, 5 minutes. I'm going to attempt to get us back on track here. Mr. City Manager, did you say we might consider another change?
Well, actually, I have an indulgence to ask of council.
Can I ask the audience members if they want to continue to speak to just step out into the hall, kindly? Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'd like to ask for your further indulgence in asking if we could discuss item number 5 that was pulled from the consent agenda and have that go ahead of the discussion on the pro plan. I've got a staffing issue tonight with a matter of timing. Okay. So I ask for your indulgence on that. I think we can resolve this very quickly.
Great.
My comments were based on the format of how the stuff is, how the information is brought to the city. When it goes to the water district, I know it has to be GIS ready. So when we're looking at contracts in the future with growth pays for growth, my comment is that we shouldn't be having to worry about having paid contracts in the future. It should be coming to the city ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing that up. Actually, staff has made that observation as well. And so going forward, we are going to require that the stormwater attribute mapping in GIS either come to us in GIS accessible format so that we can just plug it into our system or into that layer, or if the developer or property homeowner, whatever, whoever's putting the system in, doesn't have the ability to do that, then they would then pay for that as part of their permitting system. So we will be taking that forward. So thank you for your observation. Greatly appreciated. I asked the same question early, so thank you.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve consent agenda 5.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? By a vote of 7-0, that passes, which was the stormwater feature and attribute mapping in GIS.
Great. Thank you, Council.
Okay, so now we are going to go forwards and backwards and go to the pro plan. So, Mr. City Manager.
Without further ado, let me turn things over to our Parks Director, Angie Fesser.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and remaining members of the public. My name is Angie Fesser. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation. I'm joined this evening by Anjali Meyer, Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation. And we're very excited and proud to present the 2018 Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan for consideration of adoption this evening. This planning project, which has, oh, Lita, are we? Okay, sorry. This planning project, which has taken more than 14 months, represents a tremendous amount of public engagement and community involvement. In my opinion, accurately reflects the Parks and Recreation priorities of the Sammamish community. This evening, we're going to do a brief overview of the process. How did we get here? We're going to talk about the red line document that you have in your packets and what that reflects. We're going to touch base on the Parks CIP, which is included in the pro plan but stands independently as well, and then kind of the adoption and next steps of the process. So just to back up a little bit and kind of review, I wanted to snapshot the process and project in general. We started in February of 17 formally with parks and trails assessments, as well as recreation facility and program assessments. Basically, what do we have? And then we moved into the community engagement and public involvement. Basically, what does the community want? And then we took those two pieces and put those together to form our gap analysis of the needs analysis and needs assessment for our community. And from there, forming goals and strategies reflected in the capital project planning and implementation and funding strategies, and the draft and final plan that you have in front of you. The community involvement, we strove for quite a bit of work with that. We had more than 1,100 touches by residents in the community during the process. So recently, the council has reviewed the plan. It was handed off by the Parks Commission on January 23rd. The 6th of February was a formal hearing on this, and council comments were addressed by staff at that time. Oh boy, I gotta go back. Hold on. Just so excited, right? Just moving ahead. And then on February 13th, we broke out the CIP independently during a study session with the council and reviewed that and had discussion. And tonight we're here at the 27th looking for adoption of the plan. Now I can't seem to get it to go forward, which is great. Yeah, we'll just go. Okay. So since the last council review, there's been a couple of things. I wanted to cover those. That the feedback from the January 23rd and February 6th discussions are reflected in the red lines that are found in the current version, which illustrate the changes. So that is the draft copy that's available to the public. It's included in the packet. There's an example there to the right of what that looks like. A couple of additional suggestions were submitted by email, and most of those will be added to the final plan, including adjusting a regional trail width to 12 feet, the addition of including Soaring Eagle to the walkshed analysis maps, as well as an edit of an incorrectly identified open space. After adoption, these will be incorporated along with any other desired edits identified tonight. On February 13th, the CIP was reviewed by council in a study session, and it seemed that the group leaned towards the addition of an athletic field study and removal of an indoor facility feasibility study, which the staff will confirm later on in the presentation. There will also be 2 small CIP revisions the staff is proposing since the review on the 13th, and I'll cover those cover those shortly as well. So the park CIP is a component of the Pro Plan and reflects an implementation roadmap to fill the identified parks, trails, and open space gaps identified within the plan. It's a planning document and not a budget document. Currently, also in the park CIP, we have no ball field projects in 2018. We're waiting the athletic field study completed later this year to inform that. In the CIP, the 2019-20 projects will be considered for inclusion during the budget process later this year as well. And the timing of the Pro Plan and related park CIP is a bit unique because it's falling in the middle of a biennium budget. The current park CIP was adopted in June of 2016, and priority projects were adopted in the 2017-18 budget. However, this Pro Plan has identified some new projects that should be considered in 2018 but are not currently adopted budget, and that's what we want to focus on a little bit tonight. So 2 of the revisions that I mentioned earlier are included here. The first one, Big Rock Park B, we originally had $2.2 million allocated and identified in 2019. We're asking that we actually move $200,000 of that forward to 2018 so that we can begin planning work on that project. The second one was the Beaver Lake Preserve continuation of an existing project that's been identified in the 17-18 budget but was omitted from the CIP list. So basically making sure we're just getting it listed on the CIP. So that's what that would look like in the CIP with the changes there. These are actually reflected in the CIP in your Pro Plan tonight, and if you adopt the Pro Plan, you in essence approve the CIP changes. So these are some of the changes for 2018 that I want to talk about. We're going to kind of look at both sides of the equation, reductions and additions. I wanted to start with reductions here. So these are projects that were identified and approved in the current CIP and also authorized in the current budget, but are being recommended for delay. And you can see them listed there and the amounts and the time of delay. The last project listed for consideration is the indoor facility feasibility study. It was discussed during the study session, but staff is requesting clear direction as to its possible removal from the CIP tonight. So we just want to formalize that with the council. And then the other side of that equation are the additions. What would we like to add for 2018? So as we mentioned earlier, the $200,000 related to Big Rock Park Site B, which would be the planning work for the improvements that would allow the opening of the park and actually in 2020. So there'd be planning work this year, construction in 19, and opening of the park in 20. Plant salvage program and facility. The YMCA property development plan, which we're obligated via our agreement with the YMCA to complete. Kalani Park Master Plan, which you're actually proposing to bring forward 1 year and start that earlier. The athletic field study is mentioned earlier. And the park system-wide wayfinding program, which was recommended through the Pro Plan. And then Lower Commons, possible master plan update to respond and get ready for town center development. So the projects total about $450,000 for an addition, but we do have a savings from the completed Skyline turf replacement project that was completed last year of over $1 million. So we do have the funding available within the 17-18 budget. So basically kind of wrapping up, tonight's steps would be approving the resolution of the Pro Plan. And then from there, we would transmit this completed plan to RCO and be eligible for the grant funding cycle, which we are very interested in applying for. March 20th, we will be back for a public hearing related to the comp plan amendment, identifying the changes related to this Pro Plan. In the last quarter of this year, the full comp plan amendment would be approved, and this would be one of the pieces. So that kind of concludes the presentation tonight. If we could go back to some of those items that we are requesting some clarification on or have discussion, that would be great. I also do have background slides on those projects we listed if anybody would like additional information.
I don't have any questions up here unless somebody wants to press a button. Oh. Why did I ask that? Councilmember Ross.
Oh, just questions or feedback right now.
For staff, do you have any questions?
No, not on what she presented, but I have some feedback.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, it's a really good document. I read it through again and again and again. And the only thing that struck me, just some detailed items, is when we are referencing percentages throughout, I think we're inconsistent. So we might want to look at the consistency of that.
Okay.
And then the question is on page 75. I think we talk about ball fields. And I guess the question regarding that is 2 additional, I think it was baseball fields and 3 soccer fields. Are those taken into account if we fully developed with turf and lights and increased capacity of existing fields? Or is that assuming we didn't? What's the assumption underlying that recommendation?
That's page 75.
Page 75. So it talks about, on the document, the city should plan for at least an additional 2 baseball fields and 3 soccer fields to meet the community's future needs. Is that fully taken into account if we made all of those fields that are potential for AstroTurf and lights does that assume that that's being invested in, or does not take into account developing AstroTurf and lights on existing fields?
It says additional. It doesn't identify if those are artificial turf or natural turf.
No, I guess the question, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The question is, in making that assessment of 2 and 3, are we assuming that we've already increased the capacity of existing fields with AstroTurf and lights?
That's a really good question.
I don't believe that it actually states one way or the other.
Right.
I think if there's an opportunity to utilize existing land to provide those facilities, that would be a way to go. But basically, I think the finding is that we need to provide that additional space for use, and it doesn't state how we're to find that.
So I guess the follow-up is, if you did fully develop it, it could reduce the 2 and 3 number.
It could bring that 2 and 3 number into play in existing land. Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Exactly.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Before I jump on that one, if we can go back a slide. Go back one more to where you talked about the Skyline Field.
There we go. This one, or?
No, where you have the savings from the Skyline Field.
There we go.
There it is.
Right there.
So my question is that an actual savings to the city, or is that a delay of expenditure? So that's an actual net savings to the city. Okay.
Correct. So
perfect.
originally 1.4 was budgeted for the renovation of Skyline Turf. The ILA was amended, and part of that amendment and reduced community use hours was our reduction of contribution. So it was, instead of us paying for that 100%, we actually paid for 20%.
So this is the net reduction because of and part of it reflecting the usage that we were talking about, the changes that we're taking in. And obviously in my previous comments, that's always been a big issue of mine, have been the loss of time from those community fields as well as the Margaret Mead one. I'm surprised we only have 50,000 for the athletic field study, though. As I was looking in the pro plan and the parks and development improvements under sports field, you identify that right now you currently believe we need 3 ball fields and 2 soccer fields. To expect that will be the need coming on. And that's on page 73 that you have cited that.
Right.
2 points with that. First of all, I understood when we were doing the ball field at East Lake that we were going to be changing from ball fields because of the popularity of that sport decreasing into multi-use fields, similar to what we did at East Lake High School. So even though it was a baseball field, it was lined to be able to play soccer, lacrosse on it. That's the same idea with these that are contemplated as we go forward?
I think that's an option to consider if you have a large enough field space that you can overlay fields on there, but sometimes you have to be kind of careful though about scheduling. If you have activities that overlap seasons, then you have one use at a time, obviously.
Well, that's where I was going, because I understood it was a policy then that we were moving towards, that we would go to ball fields that would be lined for multiple use, to be similar to what happened with East Lake, because that was a very contentious time here when the East Lake High School came up and the discussions were looking at that, and they were showing the usage of those fields could be maximized in capacity, as to going to the point that Councilmember Ross had in being able to take advantage of those lights. The other question that I had related to that is what other aspects, since you know a current approximation of what you need for current fields now, and we had talked about earlier in the study saying that you were 50% more service could be done, what else will this athletic field study include in it?
Right. So the field study, we touched base on that, I believe, a little bit on the 13th, but it's talking about diving in further to a gap analysis of both basically what are the user groups, what's the demand, what is available currently, and then figuring out the gap analysis for that. But then what's the best approach to answering that? And is that going from natural turf to artificial turf? Is that multi-use fields? Is that putting lights on fields and or new fields, absolutely brand new fields, or renovation of fields? And then also identifying the priorities of that and the implementation plan of which fields do you do first to better meet the demand. Do you renovate city fields? Do you work with community fields with the school district? Do you find something new? So that plan will definitely dive into that a lot more and help us prioritize our approach in the upcoming years about increased capacity and the most effective way to do that.
Okay, thank you. Next question on Big Rock Park, Site B, Phase 1 improvements, 200,000, and similar for all of our projects. When we were talking about Big Rock Park the first time, and we were looking at a capital investment there of the master plan, had 4.2 million. At that time, I had asked that we include the maintenance, annual maintenance that's expected of that. I believe that the anticipation for Big Rock Park was going to be 400,000. So not necessarily now, obviously, but when we come to the budget time and we're looking at these improvements, it would be good to see what the maintenance being incurred on. Councilmember, former Mayor Lee Felling used to say that very quickly, as in the case of Big Rock Park, in 10 years, we'll be paying more for the maintenance than we did for the actual improvements and installation. And it would be good for the council to have that information in front of them to understand the implications for the long term that will be being assumed. And then finally, I know that there's been different discussions on it, but the Arts Commission wasn't hit upon on this presentation, but I'd like to make sure that while this is the presentation here, it's not the budget issue, that come the budget time, that the arts be flushed out more so that we can make sure that we're addressing those issues as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Deputy Mayor Hornish.
There were comments from Jan Bird earlier tonight.
Right.
Did you capture those, and would that be included in the final?
Yeah, and I actually spoke with her and asked her to email me tomorrow specific changes, and then we'll incorporate them.
Okay, so we would incorporate that into what we adopt tonight.
Yeah,
then. Okay,
yeah,
Thank you.
we already talked. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't have any more questions up here, although, well, I suspect people have questions or at least comments about the CIP part, so. Yes, no? We'll have to get to it first. Deputy Mayor.
It doesn't sound like we have questions, so I'm going to move that we adopt the resolution related to adopting, adopting the 2018 Pro Plan for purposes of meeting the Washington State Department of Recreation and Conservation Office submittal requirements.
I would second that motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I want to say thank you. I know, what'd you say, 14 months? It feels like 18, but okay.
Great job. Great job.
And I feel like we were pretty streamlined up here in getting through it for a big document that had a lot of touch points. I think, the council at least gets some kudos for having a pretty streamlined approach to it as well.
Yes, staff will applaud council when you pass this. Oh, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more comments, so all those in favor of adopting the 2018 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Pro Plan update, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By a vote of 7-0, it is approved.
Thank you, council, and applause from staff.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Well
very
done.
much.
No applause.
And also, staff, thank you very much. This was quite a long process and with several starts and stops, but great job for everybody that also provided input. We could not have done this without the community involvement on this plan, so thank you all.
Good, so next we move to council reports. I gotta click to it, hold on a second here.
We're not reading these, right?
Pardon?
We don't need to read through.
No, we don't, but I have action items on mine,
Yes, you do.
so, sorry.
No, you do.
You'll have to indulge me. So first, I brought this up over email to the council, and I would appreciate getting some feedback as to how to contend with action items that might come in our council reports. Whether or not you want to go through them all here, if we want to add them onto a study session. So a lot of the questions that I have here, and I tried to highlight what I need input on and what I need direction on for the Public Issues Committee specifically. But I gave you a bulk of the information there so that you could read it in advance. But there may be times when Councilmember Valderrama has to bring stuff forth from Eastside Fire and Rescue as well. And so my question is do you want to do it here during council reports? I got a no down there, I got a yes.
I think it's going to vary, right? I think that there needs to be an understanding that if you have a PIC meeting next week, and this is the last meeting, whether it's, a study session or a regular council meeting, then we have to deal with it, then yes. But if it's something that we can take some time to move to a study session, I think that would be better in terms of being able to flush some of the ideas out, not feel like we're trying to get through it quickly.
Well, some of the issues that come out of the PIC are bulky.
Yeah.
And some of those are in here. But some of them are, I don't necessarily, it's nice to have feedback to take back to the PIC. I don't necessarily need positions on all of them right now, but we can do them in council reports, and then if it becomes an exhaustive process, then we can make an alternate selection on that. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'd like to see for items that are going to go back to PIC where you're going to vote on them, I'd like to make sure that we bring them up here so we can get that feedback.
And they will.
Okay.
That's why they're in here. So
perfect.
they haven't published the next Public Issues Committee agenda yet, but I know that they'll be seeking some direction for, so item 1 is the King County Land Conservation Initiative. So I don't know if you all had a chance to read through what I provided there, but your position, generally speaking, you're not married to anything because we're not voting on it right now, but it's nice to know whether the council as a body support or opposes the initiative. And I kind of gave you a little bit of flavor in my council report as to discussion that was had at the PIC meeting. So, Deputy Mayor Hornish.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out on a limb, and my view is I don't know how everybody else is feeling about increased property taxes. Mine went up almost 40% from last year. So I'm opposed to any additional increases as to the item number 1.
Okay. Let's see. We've got Councilmember Ritchie.
I'm interested in talking about number 3, the comprehensive solid waste management plan, in terms of
Well, let's start with item 1 on there, just so you've got the floor. Are you in opposition or in favor of the King County Land Conservation Initiative?
Based on what I'm reading, I'm in favor of it.
I have Councilmember Valderrama.
I'm opposed for it, and after I looked at my new assessment, I think that right now everybody's got tax fatigue at this point in time. I think they'd behoove them to wait a year and then come back again, because I think it would be perceived as insensitive to our citizens at this point.
Councilmember Stewart.
I know we're trying to get a little more information, but I think I'm generally in favor of it because I think as a city we could benefit from that. We have set aside money for land acquisition, and if we can get King County to pick up part of that tab, then I think our citizens would appreciate that. So I'm in favor.
Councilmember Ross.
I'm not in favor of it, primarily because we got to quit incrementally increasing our taxes. We're at a prioritization, but at all levels of government, and so I think we just got to be careful we don't just do these one-offs one at a time.
Councilmember Miranda, do you have any thoughts on it? Again, we don't have to be married to a position here, but it's nice to be able to take that feedback.
Well, my concern is also for the fact that the taxes keep going up, and when I start seeing bonds or levies or schools, anything for the schools go down, it tells me that taxpayers are fatigued. So I think that they've picked the wrong year to try to do this, and it might be worth their while to wait a year.
Okay, so the next one on here, just feedback if you have it, on the local hazardous waste management program. Everyone's reading it right now, I can tell. It was riveting material. So there's still a lot of questions, and if you guys have questions or feedback you want me to take back to the PIC on it, I think some of the questions I put in here that came up from the PIC was, is this going to add new staff members? How are they planning to fund paying for the new facility? These weren't known answers at the time we had the PIC meeting, but if you have further questions that you want me to bring forth to the PIC.
Number 2.
Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Hornish.
When I looked at this, I couldn't take a position because I need answers to the questions that are already asked. And until I get those answered, I really don't know what else to ask.
Yeah.
So it was kind of preliminary or premature in my mind to kind of take a position. I hate to say it.
Okay, I don't have any more lights up. Anybody?
Number 2.
No, I think he wanted 3.
Oh, you wanted 3?
He doesn't have a light on though. So next we have the King County Comprehensive Solid Waste Management Plan. And again, I just need some feedback if you have it. Councilmember Ritchie.
I do. I think this, the opportunity to take a look at waste energy plan. I had a great conversation with County Council member Kathy Lambert about this issue, and they've really done a lot of research on what some options are as opposed to sticking garbage in the ground and wondering what's happening and water issues. We have to come up with a different solution. And based upon the research that I saw and the information she provided and some other research I've done, I think this is something we should seriously consider, and we need to at least pursue it in as much as we're not scared of what it's doing to the air. Let's look at some alternatives. Let's think outside the box. And I think that's what this comprehensive solid waste management plan does. And I hope we can support it. I do.
Deputy Mayor Hornish.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but I was a little caught off guard somewhat about it's controversial from an environmental standpoint, the conflicting ideologies of the carbon pollution. I don't have that information. I don't have that understanding. So I can't really say yay, but it sounds like a great idea, but for that, so I would kind of want more information about what that really means.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, I would echo that comment, although I do feel more comfortable knowing Seattle's not part of this study, so that made me feel a lot better.
Can I just real quick? Sorry.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Councilmember Hornish, from what I understand, it's air versus water, ground versus, I mean, are we putting particulate matter into the air, burning it off in an incinerator?
Versus the current system that goes in the water.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
you have air versus water. What are we affecting? Where's the damage? And that's the conflict in terms of how we're damaging the environment. And from what I've seen, the damage to the air versus the damage to the water they're not even close. We don't even know what's sinking down into the ground versus we know from looking at European countries that have waste to energy incinerators, the amount of air particulates, we're talking about a dozen diesel vehicles, which isn't good, but compared to what we don't know,
For the water. Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
It's a huge advantage. So it made me really get interested and excited about the opportunities this presents. So.
Okay, cool.
And finally, the tobacco-free parks and stadiums. And by way of background that isn't in here, this started with the baseball teams, so the Mariners, pro baseball teams, and not having chewing tobacco because it looked bad for them to be on TV chewing tobacco and children were watching, but they could not ban the players. So that's where this is from chewing. So that's where this has stemmed from. There's some feedback list.
And chew?
Pardon? Yes. Because of the players' union. So that's where this stemmed from.
Hold it.
There's a little bit of context from concerns that the PIC had, the county telling cities what they should do. Sammamish already bans smoking, and I did ask our city manager in advance whether or not we'd ever issued a ticket in Sammamish, because it came up, and so I was curious if we had.
We have done the research, and to the best of our knowledge, we have not actually issued a citation. However, there have been numerous occasions where people were asked to cease and desist. And as you all know, we would much prefer compliance rather than citation. So everybody actually did assist us in complying with the requests.
So I don't know if council has a position on this in particular. Councilmember Stewart.
I mean, given that healthcare is such a huge problem at every level, and that there is no scientific data to say that using any form of tobacco is not bad for your health, right? There's just no good can come from it. I support it. It's not just about a health issue. It's also a budget issue. The more we can prevent the diseases from occurring, the better off we all are. So I'm for it.
Councilmember Ross?
The only part I really feels strange is we're effectively imposing new rules to other cities. We're already complying or already have the regulation. So why are we messing with the other cities?
Well, so as a PIC representative, though, I mean, I bring forth our vote, but we're kind of a body, so I just look at it from that standpoint. But I hear what you're saying. We don't have technically a vested interest in this, but there is potentially a precedence for county overreach, telling the city what to do.
Right.
So, Deputy Mayor Hornish.
And that's where I'm at. I think it's a reach of a higher government. I think it should be a local issue. So I just don't think King County should be the one imposing their views on the cities and the individuals.
Councilmember Stewart, did you have something?
Yeah, I would just remind folks that our kids go and play in other cities and sometimes even other counties, right? So if you're on a travel team, those types of things, even just high school sports. So I would just know that, not trying to overreach, but if the SCA as a body can get everyone on board, then I think it's a good thing, because otherwise our kids are going to be exposed. So.
Okay. Councilmember Ritchie.
Yeah, I kind of thought that this kind of thing is what the SCA was supposed to be doing. I mean, we're not imposing our values on another city. We're being asked, please, Mayor Malchow, tell me, we're being asked our opinion, our perspective as one of the member cities on the SCA. And we can say yes, no, or we don't know, right? Or we support it, we don't support it.
Technically, we don't want to abstain.
Okay.
If we can avoid it, it's better to take a position.
Okay. So the position is, I don't look at this as judicial overreach necessarily, as much as this is a decision that I mean, SCA can't impose this. This is a question as to,
No,
the
but-
SCA is saying, do we support King County's actions? It's a county action affecting several municipalities. I'm thinking, who has professional sports? Is this all sports? Is this tobacco-free parks
Well,
and
it's where it
stadiums?
started, but it's now parks and stadiums.
So any park in any municipality cannot have any tobacco use, period, full stop.
In King County.
In King County.
Exactly.
And that.
Good idea.
I don't disagree with it.
Yes.
But I mean, to Councilmember Mounts, or to, sorry, Deputy Mayor Hornish, I'm gonna get it one of these days. To Deputy Mayor Horn, and Councilmember Ross's statements, are we being asked if this is something that we have the legal purview to impose? Are we imposing, or are we acting as a SCA member city?
Well, we are an SCA member city.
Okay.
So we're not imposing or anything. We're just informing SCA as a body what our position is. All the jurisdictions that are a part of, which is everybody basically except Seattle.
Yeah.
What our position is on it.
So
So,
do
we don't have a say on whether or not this is going to happen or not, but
Right.
we do have a say as far as informing the higher bodies what our position is as a collective body as SCA.
Do we think this is a good idea generally,
Yes,
or not?
yes, and
Okay.
SCA will likely take a position on it,
Okay.
assuming that there's not dissension among the cities, in which case they will stay neutral on it.
Are you doing head nods, or are we taking a little poll? What do we
Well,
do?
I'm scribbling down as when you guys say it, so I don't have where you're at.
Supportive.
Okay. Councilmember Valderrama.
I'm opposed for the reason being that I do think it's overreach, and I think this can come and bite us. If you allow this or encourage this to happen, remember, we don't have marijuana sales in our jurisdiction. The same concept can come back that they say, hey, we would now like to require every city to now sell marijuana in their districts. And by doing this, we're setting a precedent for them to be coming in and messing with our jurisdictional authority that we've respected to now. And so I would be opposed for that reason of sovereignty of our city's decision-making and what may be coming down that may be worse to ourselves if we open ourselves up to this.
Good. Councilmember Moran, did you have a take on this? Sorry, I like to put you on the spot.
I'm from the Midwest. This is a tough one.
We don't deal with any tough things.
Because it's too cold to be outside smoking, or what? Like, what does that have to do with it?
I never thought I'd be stuck having to answer this one. Okay. Hope my family never sees this. I think it's overreaching for the county. I will take that position on it. I'll say
Okay.
nothing about the tobacco end.
Very good. Okay. That's all I have as far as pick. The governance committee met, and it's there. We don't have any recommendations yet, but I just wanted to let folks know that we did meet. So, okay. Are there council reports for those that are not already listed in our packet? Councilmember Valderrama, did you have anything?
I do, but I've got to find it again
Okay.
because they keep updating the
All right.
versions.
Well, I'm
There
gonna
we go.
jump over you then.
I'm ready to go here.
Oh, you are? Okay. Very
I
good.
am indeed. So, first of all, I wanted to give the report from the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board meeting. As some of you may know, I was elected vice chair of that. It's the first time Sammamish has ever, in its history, according to Don Jaron, been able to have a leadership position there. I thought that was kind of interesting in almost 20 years of that membership. Of points of interest is Fall City was supported to be, is now in merger discussions with District 10. The advantage to Sammamish, if that takes place, is that they're going to be increasing their crews from 2-man crews to 3-man crews. Fall City's fire station is the first responder to the Aldera, Montaigne, Trossachs area for us, so it would be a net benefit for Sammamish directly for this taking place. And as an annexation type approach similar to ours, like Klahani, we cannot oppose it or do anything, but just letting you know for information purposes. Also, there is going to be a change that's in the work on vehicle branding. The Eastside Fire and Rescue vehicles that you now currently see are now being considered to have city names starting to come onto it. So that will also be seen Eastside Fire and Rescue with Sammamish's name on it. So that'll be of interest as we go forward here. Another thing, well, we've already talked about the King County unit, interesting. Oh, and I did go to the Art Commission's Legos event. 500 people were out there again.
wow.
It was packed during that. I went twice to it, and it was packed. People are asking to do it multiple times a year. Unfortunately, their budget currently doesn't allow that, so we'll have to look at that as we go forward. But it was a great event to be able to participate in. Thank you.
Good. Councilmember Moran, did you have a report?
No.
Okay.
No, wait a second. You got to give the public safety report.
I know, but no.
All right. Deputy Mayor Harnish.
I have nothing other than EFR that has been discussed.
Okay, Councilmember Ross.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Good. We will move to our city manager's report then.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'm going to ask for assistance of Angie Fesser. I wanted to report out on the success of the inaugural Sammamish Chinese New Year celebration. I think several council members were there. And this was made possible by a wonderful partnership with Central Washington University Sammamish, Skyline Chinese Classes, YMCA, Sammamish Chinese School, the Seattle Chinese New Immigrant Center, and the Yahaha Youth Club. And we're very, very pleased and grateful for the contribution of advice, time, and dedication that we received from them to help implement this cultural community event. This event featured a diversely talented group of artists from around the area, and they showcased many activities centered around Chinese cultural and ceremonial traditions. Some of the highlights included ceremonial lion and dragon dances. I know there were some young children that were very much afraid of the dragon dances. That's how realistic they were. There were some kung fu demonstrations, and we also had numerous opportunities for youth dancers and singers to showcase their talents. In addition, there were 16 interactive traditional activity booths as well as Chinese cuisine being served. And so we had great outpouring of people coming to the event. It exceeded our expectations on so many levels. We were planning on around 1,000 people, but we believe that attendance more than doubled to a crowd of about 2,500 people in attendance. And we feel that this potential with our partners has a potential to grow even larger, and given community feedback next year to be more inclusive, we're going to relabel it as the Lunar New Year celebration to include all Asian cultures. Again, we had a great outpouring of support from our community partners, and they've made it known that they would love to have this be an annual event for the city to partner in. So at this particular point in time, we do intend on doing that. So thank you. Second item that I wanted to bring to your attention is that on Como News several days ago, it was reported that they had a finding from the National Council for Home Safety and Security. They ranked Sammamish as the #1 safest city in the state of Washington. We were very pleased to see that. And then secondly, that same week, but just a couple days after, on MSN, they reported that Niche, 2017 Best Places to Raise a Family. They did the input by state, and Sammamish was ranked the #1 place in the state of Washington to raise a family. So kudos to everyone related to that, and thanks to council, thanks to staff, and most of all, thanks to our community to allow us to have that. I will mention that you've heard it from me before, that some of the pressures that we have that we're facing currently, that we're trying to deal with, essentially it's become problematic that we're limited by our success, and we're being hurt in some ways by the success that we have been enjoying. People really want to live in Sammamish, and it's a great place to live, but it's been problematic in that regard. So I thank you all for that. So that is the end of my report.
Great. Next, we have executive session, and it says if necessary on here, but my understanding is that we are having executive session.
I believe we can have executive session and it would be regarding property acquisition. And I believe since we may be running ahead of schedule, I think we could probably do it in about 20 minutes.
Great. All right.
And I would expect that there would be no action taken after.
Very good. All right. The council will return in approximately 20 minutes. I think he's ready. All right. I think we're done here. Is there a motion to
Is he ready?
adjourn?
Wait a minute.
We don't have our city manager.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned.